I got this script for a thing called You're the Boss. And I read it, and I loved it. And this was the mid-season pilot season that I was getting a couple of scripts from ABC. And I got this other one called Command 5, and I got another one called Staff of Life. So I went up for all of them. And they were all interested in me. But when I went in for You're the Boss, I went in with this new place that I was coming from. And I met Marty Cohen and Blake Hunter, and I did one scene for them. And then I read another scene for them. And they said, thanks. And I said, I love this. Can I read another scene? And I ended up reading all these scenes for them in the pilot.
What did you love about it?
I loved the story. I loved, and remember, this was the early 80s. This was a flip. This was a woman who was a powerhouse in her job and out there in the working world in advertising in New York City and absolutely inept at home, but willing to hire somebody that her mother thought was a good idea, and a man who was strong and sensitive and vulnerable and could actually teach her something. And I thought, that's a powerful story. And to this day, I have young women come up to me and say, it was Angela Bauer that changed my life about what I could do in the world as a woman. Wow. One of the first most powerful feminists. And I said, I love the humor of it. I love the relationship with the children. I love the relationship with her mother. I loved the potential for the relationship with this man, that it was about two people who cared about each other, not what their jobs were. And that this was a man who was sensitive enough and enough of his own person to know that he could do this and that he was supporting someone and a family and taking care of his own family. I mean, the levels were multiple. And of course it became Who's the Boss? And everybody writes me still all the time and says, so who was the boss? And the answer I always give is, that was the beauty of the show. You never knew from week to week. There was always a chance that could have been little Jonathan. But somebody was always the person who was being put forward as the person who knew something, had an answer, was there to be there for somebody else. And so, story. I mean, I wasn't thinking terribly well about how to orchestrate a career. And one of the things that Herb said to me in the very beginning was, he said, listen, you have to look at yourself like you are a commodity, like you are a bottle of ketchup. Because if you don't, you're going to get all your emotions all tangled up with all of this, which is what I had been doing. And he said, think of yourself like that. Think of yourself in a different way, so that you can remove all the emotional stuff from it, so that you can be on target with where you are going, so that you can be listening to the messages that are being sent to you. So I said, okay, now that I have these 3 opportunities at the network, how do I want to place those opportunities? Because you went up to the network to do your final audition for them if they were interested in you. So Command 5 was number 3. You're the Boss was number 2. And Staff of Life was number 1. Have you ever heard of Staff of Life?
I have not.
Okay, you have not. Okay. Well, it was about soap opera writers, and I thought maybe that was why I should be looking at it. And it was very well written, and this brilliant director, Jay Samrich, was directing it, and it was like, oh, this is interesting. So I said, okay, Staff of Life in first place. I go up to the network. Of course, I'm a nervous wreck. I go up, I audition for it, I'm finished, and then they say, You're the Boss wants you to audition with Tony Danza on camera. So it wasn't just going to the network. They were going to take this tape to the network. Now, I said to Herb, no, I don't need to go up for this. And Herb said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I went up for Staff of Life. He said, what are you doing? He said, you're not going up for it because you're terrified. And of course, in my inimitable fashion, I said, no, I'm not terrified. I said, okay, yes, I am terrified. He said, get your gear together and go in for the audition. Now, of course, the brilliant Bill Persky is directing this. I go in. I do this audition. You can even find this audition. It's out there floating around somewhere. I bet you have it, right? Of course you do. Look at you. I go in. I meet Tony. We do the audition together. It's magic. I love it so much. Bill Persky is so supportive. Tony is so supportive. We have this moment in there that wasn't written in, that people have talked about when they've seen this audition tape, where he knocks on my door in the middle of the night. I come out, I'm in my nightgown and robe, and of course there's a lot of chemistry. And I say to him something about, I don't want to stand here in my doorway talking to you. I cross over in front of him to go in to sit down in the hall. There's a bench in the hall. And I know him. I mean, I know. And I just turned around at one point in the audition. I said, what are you looking at? As I crossed in front of him. And Persky says that's when he knew that there was the magic. And we finished. I left and I said, oh my. And I called Herb and I said, I think I made a really bad mistake. I put Staff of Life first, and this is the one I really want to do. And he said, well, there's nothing to do except allow for divine choreography. And I said, I don't know if I have the patience for that. He said, no, you have to let it unfold. Well, unbeknownst to me, of course, because all these projects are at ABC, they know who they want for what. And they were clear that once they saw the tape, they said, that's the pairing. That's what we have to do.